Hello, welcome to tonight's webinar. This is an interactive online experience and we want to hear from you. You can participate by asking questions, answering poll questions, and completing interactive activities. The majority of our time will be spent answering your questions. Let's spend a moment getting to know this Q&A environment. On your screen, you'll see the video and slides window and their corresponding icons. Should you want to minimize either, you can just click the icon, and you can also resize each of the windows. You will also see a studio chat tab and button. That is where you can engage in conversation with fellow attendees. And most importantly, you'll see the Q&A tab. That is where you can ask us questions. All of our Q&As and webinars this year are accessible on computers, tablets, and smartphones, so you can even take us on the go. When you click on the resources icon, you'll find documents and other information that we'll mention during today's discussion. We'll also ask you to respond to some poll questions, which you'll see appear in the slides window. And at the conclusion of tonight's Q&A, please take a few minutes to complete our survey. It will automatically appear on your screen. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to Common Scams to Avoid, IRS Imposter Scams. My name is Liz Buser and I'll be your host today. I'm joined in studio by Sina Gresson with the Bureau of Consumer Protection at the Federal Trade Commission and remotely by Jeff Long, Assistant Inspector General for Investigations at the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration. Welcome, Sina and Jeff.
Hi, Liz. It's good to be here.
Today's Q&A is part of a three-part series focusing on common scams to avoid. During our conversation, we'll discuss the IRS Imposter Scam. So what is it? How do you identify it? What red flags should you look for? How do you report it? And where can you find free local and national resources to help protect yourself and your loved ones? A recent AARP survey on IRS tax scams found that 1 in 4 people say they or a loved one have received what appeared to be a phony call in the last 12 months from someone impersonating an IRS agent. For today's poll question, we want to know, have you received such a call? Yes or no? Just select the answer on your screen, and we'll give you a moment to answer. So I know that I haven't, but I've received many other calls from scammers. What about you, Sina? And then Jeff, what about you as well?
Well, I've received IRS imposter calls at home and on my work phone at the FTC. They can be frightening. What you need to know is that these scammers are good at what they do. If you or someone you know has fallen for an IRS imposter scam, don't feel ashamed. You've got lots of good company. Talk about it, tell your friends. Maybe your experience can help someone you care about avoid the same problem.
That's a great point. What about you, Jeff?
Yes, I certainly have too, Liz. And more concerning to me is that my mother-in-law and father have also received those calls. When they told me about those calls, they were confused and somewhat frightened because of the intimidation tactics that the scammers are using. My father was understandably a little embarrassed because they almost hooked him.
It definitely happens to everyone. So let's take a look at the poll questions. And it looks like 56% of our audience, it has happened to them. With about 44%, it hasn't. So we hope you find tonight's session to be very helpful. So let's talk about what is the IRS imposter scam. We're going to kick off our discussion with a short video from the Federal Trade Commission that highlights how you can spot scammers who pretend to be IRS officials and then they try and steal your money.
Scam artists are pretending to be IRS officials to get your money. They'll call, email, or text you, claiming you owe back taxes or there's a problem with your tax return. They even rig caller ID to make the call look official. They play on your fears. They threaten to take your driver's license or sue, arrest, or deport you. They want you to pay fast. What's the truth? The truth is the IRS's first contact with you will always be a letter in the mail. It's not a phone call, email, or text message. They won't insist that you pay with a prepaid debit card, a wire transfer, or cashier's check. Now you know. Has an IRS imposter contacted you? Report it at ftc.gov/imposters.
What a great video by the Federal Trade Commission. Sina, can you tell us more about the IRS imposter scam?
Thanks, Liz. The IRS imposter scam is frightening because someone's calling you, they're claiming to be from the IRS, and they're telling you that you owe back taxes. And the IRS impersonator may know all or part of your Social Security number, may make the caller ID look like the call is really coming from the IRS when it isn't, threaten to arrest you unless you pay them immediately, and tell you to put the money you supposedly owe them on a prepaid debit card or a gift card. There are red flags here. The IRS will in fact first contact you by the U.S. mail, not by phone, email, or text message. They're also going to threaten you. They're not going to threaten to arrest you. They're not going to threaten you with a lawsuit. They're not going to tell you you're going to lose your home. They're not going to threaten you with tax penalties. And they're not going to tell you that you've got to pay with an iTunes card or another gift card. The IRS doesn't take payment that way. And the IRS will never demand a specific form of payment or payment within a matter of minutes. Jeff, do you have anything to add?
I do, yes, Liz. Some of these, what we have learned from some of these scammers is that they're using coordinated infrastructure that we believe in one aspect is being used for legitimate telephone customer or support services. But behind the scenes, that personally identifiable information or PII of their customers is also being used by individuals with access to that information in the backroom call centers to pose as individuals from the IRS. And so when they call the victims, they are using that personal identifying information to make themselves seem more legitimate. And then they use the combination of threats, like Sina said, pressure such as threatening arrest, deportation, even sometimes suspension of Social Security benefits. It's best not to engage with them at all. These are professional con artists, and they're very good at their craft. Another thing they are doing is using caller ID spoofing technology, which makes it look as if the telephone number on your caller ID is calling from the United States, or in some cases, calling from an IRS 1-800 number. And in fact, sometimes they have even spoofed their numbers to make it look like they're calling from our numbers at TIGTA. Liz?
Thanks, Jeff. That's scary. So if you receive a threatening call from someone who's claiming to be from the IRS, what should you do? Sina?
Well, if you receive that type of call, please don't give out any information. Just hang up and report it to the FTC's website at www.ftc.gov/complaint. And if you think you may owe taxes, check your account. You can find out this information at the IRS website, www.irs.gov/balance-due, or you could call the IRS at 800-829-1040. Liz?
Great. Thank you, Sina. Jeff, do people need to report an IRS imposter scam to TIGTA as well?
Yes, please. It is very important that you do so because TIGTA is an investigative agency. As a law enforcement investigation agency, we'll use that information that's reported by the victims on our online reporting form to help track the impersonation scam across the country. We can also use that information to shut down the scammers' telephone calls. And we even have our own robocaller that we use to call the scammers back to advise them that what they're doing is illegal and to cease. So yes, it's important for law enforcement to receive the information from the victims to report that information.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. You can also call AARP's Fraud Watch Network helpline if you have spotted a scam or think you have been scammed. That telephone number is 877-908-3360. Remember, the IRS will never call to demand payment without first sending notification by mail, ask for credit or debit card numbers by phone, or call and threaten arrest over non-payment. Now, Jeff, I know there's a lot of IRS imposter scams out there. How many are reported to the government each year?
Well, if we're talking specifically about the IRS impersonation scam tonight, I can tell you that in late 2016, TIGTA received a peak number of 30,000 reports per week on the IRS impersonation scam.
Wow.
We are still getting around 5,000 victim reports per week.
That's an incredible number, and thank you both for your helpful tips. Just a reminder to our audience, you can ask a question at any time. Just type it in the Q&A box on your screen. So let's take a look at some of the questions that are coming in. So our first question is from Sophia. She wants to know what happens if you do give scammers your money. How do you get it back? Jeff?
Thanks, Les. The authorities do their best to recover the financial losses and impersonation scams. Unfortunately, as I said before, the scammers have a very sophisticated network to launder the money. So even though the authorities do all we can to recover monetary losses, unfortunately, it's not likely. We do try to do the best we can during the investigation stage and also in prosecutive judgments for financial relief.
Sina, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, just to second what Jeff's saying, if you do pay using a debit card or a gift card or a money transfer, that's like sending cash. And once you send it, the scammers and your money are gone.
That's scary to think about. So our next question's from Lewis. He says, if your name is on the Do Not Call registry, is there a chance that you will still receive calls from scammers?
The answer is yes. You still could get a call from the scammers because they do not adhere to the same consumer protection enhancements and guidelines and rules of law-abiding companies and citizens of the United States. They are criminals attempting to steal money from victims. So yes, you still can receive calls if you're on the Do Not Call registry.
So that's a great point. And we actually have a follow-up question from Anne. Anne wants to know, how can I stop them from calling? I block the number, but another one calls.
Well, I can tell you that there's not a whole lot we can do. We are working with DHS and some of the telecom industry partnerships to develop technology for the consumer that will allow to be able to block such calls. But at this point, we're not quite there yet. So the important thing to remember is to just hang up, because if you engage at all with these scammers, your number is going to kind of go back into a hopper, and they're going to try again next time and maybe be successful. So the best thing is to hang up, and hopefully that number will go off of their list.
That's great advice. Sina, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I would say, just to follow up on Jeff's point, that if you do get one of these robocalls, don't try to engage with it in any way. Don't press to speak to a live person. Don't press to be taken off the list. That's just a guarantee you're going to get more calls. So don't engage with them. The FTC a few years back did a contest to see if people could come up with a way of blocking these calls. The winner of our contest was Nomo Robo, which is NOMO ROBO. You could get an app that will help you block some of these calls, and there are several things on the market. Just take a look.
Oh, that's great. I had no idea. So these are great questions, helpful information, and I'm sure even as we're doing this webinar tonight, that people are getting these calls. So here's another great question. It's from Glenda. What happens after you report a possible scam? Does this happen often?
Yes, Liz. Many people are reporting the IRS impersonation scams to TIGTA and also to the FTC. I can tell you that since 2013, TIGTA has received more than 2 million reports of people receiving such telephone calls. And unfortunately, over 13,000 of those people reported financial losses, for a total reported loss of $65 million related to the IRS impersonation scam.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. So we're getting in some great questions. I want to remind everybody, just type your question in the Q&A box, and we'll get to some more in a moment. So let's do one more question, and then we're going to move on. So, Jeff, you talked a bit about TIGTA. Can you share more about what you guys do? Because it's probably an acronym that people haven't heard of before.
Yes, I'm not surprised. The Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration is a bureau within the Department of the Treasury. We are a law enforcement agency. We were established to provide independent oversight of IRS activities. So TIGTA promotes the economy, the efficiency, and the effectiveness in the administration of the internal revenue laws. It's also committed to the prevention and detection of fraud, waste, and abuse within the IRS. And in the case of the IRS impersonation scam, what we're doing here is working to protect the confidence of the American taxpayer in the IRS for the collection of federal taxes. We work to ensure that the IRS can fairly collect the more than $2 trillion each year needed to fund our country's needs, such as the U.S. military and our critical infrastructure. Liz?
Thank you, Jeff. Now, to learn more about how you can protect you and your loved ones from scams, Visit aarp.org/IRS-scam and aarp.org/learnit50+. We'll discuss additional resources in a few moments. Now, there's a related scam that we want to tell you about, which is that fraudsters are stealing taxpayer information from tax preparers. Sina, can you tell us more about this scam?
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Unfortunately, scammers are also stealing personal information from tax preparers. First, they hack the tax preparers' computers so that they can steal client data, and then they file fraudulent tax returns. The refund is then deposited into the victim's account. Then the scammer contacts the taxpayer, says that the refund was an IRS error and that you must forward the money to a collection agency. Or you may even receive an automated call threatening that it's the IRS and that they're going to draw up criminal charges and that an arrest warrant and even is on its way, and even that they'll even try to blacklist your Social Security number. These so-called IRS official will leave a case number and a phone number for you to call so that you can return the refund. It's a scam. Don't take that bait.
That's great to remember. Don't take the bait. So thank you, Sina. And if you do receive an erroneous tax refund, there's a couple things you can do. First, contact your financial institution and request that they immediately return the funds to the IRS. Then call the IRS. Their telephone number is 800-829-1040 and explain why the direct deposit is being returned by your bank. If you receive a paper check, however, you can follow instructions at irs.gov/tax topics/TC161. And again, these resources are available in the resources folder for access. So, Sina, there's additional related tax identity theft scams, right?
There sure are. Scammers may also misuse your Social Security number to file a tax return and claim your refund. Most people find out that that's happened to them when they try to e-file their tax return and it's rejected. It's rejected because someone else has already filed a tax return using your Social Security number. When it happens, you have to let the IRS know, and you do that by filing what's called an IRS identity theft affidavit. You can do that at identitytheft.gov. That's the FTC's one-stop resource for people to report identity theft to the FTC and get a personal recovery plan. We've recently launched a new capability that lets people use identitytheft.gov to report tax-related identity theft to the IRS directly. It's the only website you can report tax-related identity theft to the IRS directly. So please visit us if you need to, identitytheft.gov. Jeff, did you want to add anything?
Well, no, Sina, thanks very much, because that is a great resource from the FTC. I can only say that the best defense, I think, against this is to file early enough in the tax season that your taxes are already on record before someone tries to file a fraudulent tax return in your name.
That's a great point. And we do have some time remaining, so let's answer some more questions. Here's a great question from Steve. Do scammers have access to the income levels of those who are called, and do they prioritize their calls based on income levels as reported in tax filings?
This is Jeff. So I can tell you that the scam organizations have different accesses to PII. There could be times and situations where they have access to that income information, yes. I think generally what we find is there's no necessarily a demographic or pattern to the IRS impersonation scam calls. They're really just calling in vast numbers and without really doing any kind of patterning that we've been able to see.
That's a great point. Sina, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, to our experience, it's an equal opportunity scam. So
sounds like it's happening to everyone.
I think that's right.
Great question. So here's a question from Mark, and this is one I've never really thought of. What is the percentage of people who are scammed once and are then scammed again?
Well, I think that is a low Well, I think we have to make a distinction between scammed once and scammed again. I think that what we see, unfortunately, is that an individual may be scammed and they'll buy one card. So if you didn't know, the scammers will ask you to call on a mobile phone and then they'll direct you to a local store that they know sells iTunes cards or gift cards, whichever they want to use. And they'll have that individual stay on the phone and purchase that gift card and then read the number off the back of the card. And now that card has already been monetized and the actual card being held is worthless. But since they have them on the phone still, they'll make up another reason for them to buy another card. And so they might buy as many as 5, 6, 7 cards at a time for that visit to the store. They could even direct them to another store or to a bank to make a wire transfer. So the scam can involve multiple monetary financial instruments, but typically it doesn't take long for the individual to realize, that a day later that they've been scammed, and we don't see evidence of those people being scammed again.
Wow, that's incredible. Can you tell me then, Sina, speaking of scams, I think the FTC has a database where you report on top scams that are, top calls you receive for scams that are out there. Can you tell us more about that?
We do. We collect complaints from consumers and from other organizations that consumers report to, like the Better Business Bureau, TIGTA, and others. And every year we compile all that information into a data book. Last year we received, I think, 2.7 million complaints from consumers about problems they encountered in the marketplace. The top fraud that we saw was imposter scams. We also had debt collection complaints were at the very top, and we also had identity theft complaints as well, as that rounded out the top 3.
Wow, I guess you really never think about how many people are getting these calls each year and each day. So let's go to some more questions. Craig wants to know, besides ftc.gov/complaint and the Fraud Watch Network helpline, where else may I call to report this IRS impersonation scam? So Jeff, can you repeat the URL for TIGTA? And you had mentioned the Better Business Bureau. So after that, Sina, can you tell us more about that website? Jeff?
Sure. Yes, Liz. The website for TIGTA for reporting is www.treasury.gov/TIGTA. That's TIGTA. Treasury.gov/TIGTA. And on that website is the online reporting form for victims of callers, for victims of scam calls. But also we have links to our YouTube site with PSAs about the scam and also posters and other information on trending for this scam.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Sina?
That's a fabulous resource. When people report to the FTC, just so you understand, that information that you're reporting to the FTC gets put into a secure database that's available only to law enforcement, but it's available to law enforcement nationwide and to a few select international agencies. And so that puts more cops on the beat. We use the information to try to find trends and where we can bring law enforcement actions. So you can report it at other sites as well. The IRS and Better Business Bureau are of course, and TIGTA are of course top places where you might want to report it. But we also urge you to report it to the FTC so that we can get out the word to law enforcement very broadly.
Great, thank you both. Let's get to some more questions. We have a couple more minutes. George wants to know, what is the best way to protect your information when you're filing your taxes online?
Well, I'll take that one. The first and most important thing to do is to ensure that the browser or the application that you're using is actually an official IRS or IRS sanctioned website. Unfortunately, we also have seen cases where people have copied the IRS or IRS certified sites, and so the taxpayers actually loading in information, all their PII, all their tax information into a completely fraudulent website. So I think that's the most important tip to remember.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Sina, anything to add?
I would add one other thing is make sure you're using a secure website yourself. Make sure you're not filing this from a cafe where other people can get access to your computer. Use a secure website.
That's a great point. We have time for one more question. Sadie says, what about a letter stating that a refund is due because of overpayment? Should she check into that further? Do you think it's legit, or is it something she should be wary of? Jeff?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So Sadie wants to know, she received a letter saying that a refund was due to her. Is that something that's legitimate, or do you think she should be wary of that letter?
If she was not expecting that refund, then she should certainly call the IRS toll-free number at 800-829-1040 to check on her tax status. That could be one of the scams that Sina had mentioned earlier about the tax preparer, where someone has filed a tax return and using their PII and sending them a refund. It might be going into their account, and they're using a fraudulent IRS letter, mocked up IRS letter to further the fraud. So yes, if you're not expecting a refund and you received a letter saying you're due one, then I would call the IRS to check on your tax account.
Great, thank you. So actually, I want to get to one more question from James that just came in. He says he's often stayed on the phone with a call that he knows is a scam just to play with them in the hopes of discouraging them from calling him back, in effect, wasting their time. So he wants to know, he says, it sounds like you would discourage that approach. What are your thoughts, Jeff?
As a law enforcement officer, I would advise you to not do that. It could be fun, but the consequences could be dire. If your listeners are not familiar with the term swatting, that is where these scammers have, on a very rare occasion, have called the local police department, reported a threat at the location of the victim to get a police response to that location. It's a very, very dangerous situation, and we have seen that sometimes when our victims are, for lack of a better word, for playing with the scammers. These are criminals, and they are not to be played with.
That's a great question. So again, to learn more about how you can protect you and your loved ones from scams, visit aarp.org/IRS-scam and aarp.org/learnit50+. So we are out of time this evening, but we want to highlight additional free AARP resources for you to learn more about IRS imposter scams, plus federal government agency links for the IRS, TIGTA, and the FTC, in case you need to report a scam, find out if you owe taxes, or want to learn more about how you can keep you and your loved ones safe from scams. You'll see all those links on your screen. So let's watch a short video to recap what we learned.
Taxpayers lose billions of dollars every year to IRS scams, but losses in 2018 could be even worse after last year's Equifax data breach. Using stolen Social Security numbers, scammers take advantage of tax season to file false returns. They're hoping to collect tax refunds in your name long before you've even filed. Here's how to protect yourself from this and other IRS scams. First, file your return as soon as possible, especially if you're expecting a refund. Next, keep your personal information safe by shredding financial documents and using strong passwords for your online accounts. Remember, the IRS will not call to demand payment without first sending notification by mail. The IRS will not ask for credit or debit card numbers over the phone. And the IRS will never threaten to have you arrested for non-payment. If you've already filed, check your refund status at irs.gov/refunds. And to learn more about tax scams, visit aarp.org/scamalert.
And as a reminder, you can access links to all of the websites mentioned tonight. Just click on the resources icon. There you'll also find links to interactive videos and other helpful tips and tools to help you avoid IRS scams. This webinar will also be available on demand. Please take a few minutes to complete our survey. It will automatically appear on your screen in just a moment. I want to thank Jeffrey Long and Sina Gresson for joining me today. Do you have any final words for our audience?
Yes, Liz, thank you. Thank you all for your attention to this nationwide and prevalent scam. There are so many government agencies and employees working to stop this scam, but we need you, the American taxpayer, to help by doing two things. First, report to us when you are contacted. And second, share all of this good information with your family and friends because this scam will not be stopped until victims learn to recognize it early. Remember, if you receive an unexpected call from someone claiming to be from the IRS and they are instructing you on how to pay immediately, just hang up.
That's great advice. Sina, anything to add?
I couldn't say it better. Jeff captured it all. I want to thank Jeff, and I want to thank AARP and you for being wonderful hosts and colleagues.
Well, it's an important topic. So we hope everybody will join us next week for 2 scams Q&As. The first is on April 17th. That's at 1 o'clock Eastern time. So that will be a 1-hour afternoon webinar. That's on ads and scams, trends, tips, and tools from Sina's colleagues at the Federal Trade Commission. The second is on April 19th from 7 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It focuses on Medicare card scams. And you can register for both of them at aarp.org/fraud webinar, and there is a link in the resources folder. So don't forget to visit the resources on your screen for additional information. Please, again, take a few minutes to complete our survey. It'll automatically appear on your screen in just a moment. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.